Normally, I'm not a believer in what I'd call fictitious fairy tales like werewolves, vampires, and such. But I will acknowledge when I find proof of the existence of unknown animals that I didn't previously believe in. I've spent a lot of my time in the Sierra Nevada mountain range, exploring and looking for caves to dive into. I've camped out there many times. I've heard all sorts of wild, hairy tales. Things that will make your skin crawl. I, too, have found evidence to believe that there might be a predator at large that's far more potent than your typical mountain lion or black bear. I've come to find evidence of what I would best support the hypothesis that there is indeed a large alpha predator, more likely a wolf, that dominates much of the range on this mountain. I've heard stories where people talk about seeing bright lights, or even Bigfoot. I can't confirm nor deny any of that. I myself have had zero experiences with all of that. What I can confirm is the things that I know I have found that I cannot explain, and evidence that would point to a large, upright walking predatory wolf. The first major player in the evidence that I've mustered is finding large canid prints in multiple spots on my trek. There's one major component to these tracks, and it's that they don't adhere to your standard wolf-sized tracks. Your standard wolf track, on average, is around 4 inches in width and height. These that I've found are easily doubled, if not a little larger than double, and the indent is very visibly noticeable. This leans toward the fact that whatever large canine made this is not only larger, but much heavier due to a deeper indent into the soil. Here's where things get even hairier. They don't follow your typical quadrupedal pattern that a dog or a wolf would follow. They are bipedal by the pattern, following a 2-step pattern with a 4 to 5 foot stride. Massive strides. Does this support that there is some sort of large upright walking wolf around these parts? I'm not sure myself, although the evidence I've found seems to strongly show support of that for my findings. The real kicker to it all is I have found 4 to 5 sets in total of these same large canid bipedal style footprints throughout my time out here, all in varying locations and different spots. I struggle with the concept because I believe that if a wolf was to walk bipedally, it would walk like a bear in the sense where they only walk for a short distance. But the longest stretch of tracks I found went on for well over 15 feet. All of these tracks were much in the same with indentation into the dirt, size, stride, and stepping pattern. It's possible that there could be a large pack of wolves out there that have grown to an abnormal size, learning to walk bipedally for short distances at a time. I have never found sets of tracks where it's more than just one. These are all just singular wolves that I've found on my time out. That is just one, what I like to call set of evidence, if you will. Now, I'm not saying what I'm about to tell you is necessarily evidence leaning towards my hypothesis, but it makes you wonder what's going on. What's killing these animals in the way they're being killed? I have discovered multiple deer and 2 black bears on account, dead. To dive into details a little more, I'm going to discuss with you the black bear deaths. Black bears do inhabit these mountain ranges, and although I don't see them as much, I do know they are here. I respect their space and that this is their home. To my knowledge and understanding, black bears don't have any predators that are above them. They don't have to worry about being killed due to them being omnivores, and their size and stature alone is enough to ward away mountain lions, for example. I'm sure a mountain lion and a bear have gotten into it before in nature, but I wouldn't put it past me, but I don't believe that is how these 2 black bear that I found were killed. I had come to almost a small valley where there is more tree coverage and lots of rock. Great as a protective enclosure with a small little cavern-like den. I had stumbled upon an actual black bear den. If I hadn't traveled down a 50 feet steep rocky incline of this hill into this little pocket of an area, I wouldn't have found what I did. Outside this small bear den, I know it was because I did check out the den after finding these bears. I discovered the cadavers of what looked to be 2 deceased black bears. The manner in which these black bears were killed was gruesome, to say the least. Both bears were within 10 feet of each other, killed by an unknown and unforeseen predator. The larger black bear, what I believed to be a male, but I didn't check, only judging by its size, had its head completely torn off its body. There was no head to be found anywhere around the area or visible vicinity that I was in. All along its body was large, deep gashes that looked to come from claws of great size. It was a bloody mess. Although the blood was coagulated, you could tell whatever happened that this bear suffered severe damage. The other bear, which lay no more than 10 feet away from the other bear, appeared to be smaller in size and frame. My guess was a female. As with the first, I didn't think in the moment to check the genitalia. The similarities and damage to this were mainly the deep gash wounds all over its body. It made me think of grizzly bear gashes, how they're so long and run so deep. These bears' body were shredded. The claw pattern wasn't even that of a bear though. It was different. If we're being honest, the flesh was far too mangled to get an accurate look as to what any claw pattern was exactly. The difference between the 2 bear is that this one was smaller, had its entire throat torn out. There was a lot of dried blood around it. Both of these bears had just died within the last day, judging by the freshness of the kill, so they were still rather fresh. Had I not wandered down into this area, I wouldn't have caught this grisly scene. Sorry about the pun. I just wanted to shed some light into a bleak scenario. The smell of decay hadn't even hit me until I wandered into here. The tree coverage and enclosure was so thick with rocks, it was almost encasing this area loosely, if that makes sense. I can see why it made for the perfect den spot. Anyhow, after spending maybe a few moments observing these dead bear and looking for any clues, I found bits of long, stringy black hair. This hair did not belong to the bears, but something else. I found it in small clumps and random sizes around the general radius of, I'd say 20 feet around us if I had to guess. The dirt beneath our feet was disturbed. I could see there were tracks of both bear and another animal, but I couldn't make out anything distinct. There had been too much ruffled dirt. It was clear there was some sort of fight, a struggle, and some form of mountain predator tore these bears to shreds, ripped off the head of one, and tore the throat out of another. Last I checked, mountain lions don't kill like this, especially not 2 black bears. Their claw size also wasn't capable of making the gashes that I saw. These were huge. The entire scene of this upset me so much, I had to get out of there, and fast. I figured whatever did this to these bears was still close enough to this area. So, I'm left with the question, what does that to a black bear? I always thought black bears were pretty much never challenged by other animals. I guess I'm wrong. Then I think about large canid tracks that I've seen over the years, and I can't help but put 2 and 2 together. I've never seen anything like the black bear seen since then or before. I'm not sure if those tracks have anything to do with what killed those bear, but I speculate it might. If the tracks I found really do belong to some unknown upright walking canid that lives out there, you're talking about a several 100-pound canid predator. Wolves themselves are large, so something more than double its size and bipedal. Now that's scary. Who knows what kind of damage, if exist, this animal could truly be capable of. The last and only other out-of-place findings I've really had have been deer. I found deer dead in all various ways of being killed. Just in the mountains, of course, which is the context here, where I primarily spend much of my time. I've seen them with their throats torn out and mangled, which could easily be explained by the current standard predators in the area. Then there are the ones that I find are stranger than fiction. 2 ways, actually. The first is I've only found maybe 4 in total like this, but these deer are ripped to pieces. Quite literally, I mean that. torn to shreds. Whatever killed it didn't even bother to eat it, only tear it to pieces, including its guts and all. Some of them were more disemboweled than the others, but they were generally just ripped apart. The worst one I found was a young deerling, slightly older and larger than just a little fawn. All 4 legs ripped off its body. The body was ripped in half with intestines spilling. Head and neck were both ripped off and apart. Part of the face was smashed in from the left side, and it looked to be smashed by a large rock to me. This small fawn, like the rest of the other deer I saw that died this way, are found within a small space, no more than 30 feet from each body part. It too was a bloody mess, as all of them are. Of course, my spacing estimates are just guesses, of course. Nothing is ever formulaic. This fawn had to be there for a few days, so it was decaying thoroughly. But surprisingly, there seemed to be no predators that had come and taken the free meal. The fawn didn't even appear to be eaten on, just butchered. Some of the other deer I found were in fresher states of decay, as all the kills I find are usually fresher. Probably because, out there, the bodies can decay so quickly due to climate. The same case was said for the other deer that I had found. Virtually 0 signs that they were eaten on by not only what killed them, but anything other than maggots since. There is 0 known predators that will kill a deer, tear it to pieces this way, and not eat on any of the meat. I see no reason, any logical reason why any predator would waste food in that way, considering it takes time and energy of the predator to take down a prey. Biologically and by nature's law, it doesn't make sense. It's something I'm still researching and looking into. What animal kills prey aggressively just for the sake of killing? Number 2. The other way that I'll find them dead is far more disturbing in my opinion, just because of how unnatural the death itself is. I found more like this than I have torn to pieces. These ones die and have random parts of their body cut open, or missing parts of their body, with no signs of blood. In fact, the first doe I found had both of her front legs and right calf and right half of her face gone. They looked to be perfectly cut out, like a fine laser or something. No drop of blood, and the body had begun to mummify under the sun. There were 0 signs of decay other than that. No flies, no signs of maggots. Not even an odor of death or decay, actually. No signs of predators even coming to check out the cadaver. This doe was probably a week old dead, if I had to guess. It was just lying there in the middle of a small clearing, higher up in elevation. Other deer I found that were killed in this manner had very similar death patterns. Another one I found had its entire neck and head missing. Bigger doe it looked like, but the same as the first. No blood, no signs of decay, or flies or maggots. Not even predators. No smell of rot or death, and the cut once again looked surgical in nature. It was extremely clean, not a single imperfection was made. They were so clean that it looked to be man-made. At the elevation I was at, I had no answers for these happenings because I go to areas not others go to. Why would somebody be out here taking pieces of deer? It just doesn't add up to me. That also does not explain the strangeness of it all. No smell, no animal or insect touching the body. It's weird to me. Things just don't die and not give off an odor. All of this paired with the killings of both bears is kind of frightening, to say the least. Adding the deer in, and assuming there's all one big grand connection here, don't mind the conspiracy. This might be some sort of undiscovered, lone canid alpha predator. I'm no stranger to the weirdness that goes on in these mountains, along with many other mountains in the country that are notorious for UFOs, Bigfoot, and other things of that nature. I know the natives out here have many stories about these mountains, as well as a plethora of explorers and hikers alike. However, the things I've told you about are really the only encounters that I put in that category of mysterious. Everything else has just been pure survival in the wilderness. For me, to believe there is something, there needs to be a strong, suited sense of evidence for that something. That's how I've always lived by, and this situation is no exception. I cannot deny the evidence that there is something that is somewhat canid. I have no idea what it is, and others that I have talked to and spoke to don't seem to know or have an idea. Everything I know and have heard points in the direction that it is not an existent animal currently. Then we go back to the deer and the bear situation. That's very unnatural of any predator to do, whether it to be another predator or its prey. Maybe this is all a part of the weird stuff that goes on. I will continue to be vigilant, aware, and respectful of my surroundings, of the animals and places around me. This value is held true, especially when I am out in those mountains. I can't say for a fact what I've pieced together is indeed a real living creature, although it very much so is in my head. But it is definitely evidence that is based on something. What I'm not sure, I can only hope to find those answers as time goes on. This happened to me about a week ago. I live out in a big area that's primarily used for agriculture, so there's seldom houses and lots of long empty roads around here. Because of this, my nearest neighbors are about a quarter mile in both directions. Beyond that is sparsely spread out neighbors on both sides of the road, with large fields full of varying grains and plants. Between properties and areas of housing, there are large amounts of land for cattle. Think flat plains with a few trees here and there sprinkled in. Because of this, there's not a whole lot of traffic going on either way of the road. Most of the time, the entire road is dead. It makes it enjoyable for living out here. So, I have a 5-month-old son that is in this new sleep phase of his where he needs to be put in the car at night and driven to sleep. Usually, at night, I will put him in his car seat and put him in the car, get in and go for about a 20-minute drive, turning around at a certain point and driving him back. This always seems to help him lull him into sleep and works every time I do it. Alright, so now that we've got some background info cleared, here's what happened. About a week ago, it was around 10 p.m. at night. It was clear out, decent weather. Not too cold, not too hot. I come out, put my son in the car and hop in, pull out of the driveway, and we're on the road driving. If you keep driving down a road, it just continues on straight, with a sharp 90-degree turn that heads south. This road continues only for a few houses on either side, but mostly vast empty farm fields and grasslands that haven't been used. It's pretty barren. On both sides of the road, there is the typical road ditch that you would have, and then there's a small fence. In these ditches and along these fences are very tall grass. I don't know if wheatgrass is the correct term for it, maybe just wild grass. It's the tall grass that you see out in the country. That reminds me of how wheat looks. It gets very tall along here because it's never cut. This is important, and I'll explain why here in a minute. I need to mention that because we live where we do. Animal and nightlife is very common. Deer are nocturnal by nature, so we see does by the dozen out here all the time. Blacktail, actually. Skunks are commonly seen just as much as raccoons and possums. You'll even see the occasional coyote sometimes, but that's more rare. We have cougars and mountain lions out here since they come down into the valley, but I have not personally seen one yet. Deer will sometimes pop out in front of your car at night. Same with other smaller critters. This is just something anybody that lives out here will know about and understand as common sense. I know there's wild animals at night. I just don't know what it is that I saw. I know it was not a deer, plain and simple. Okay, so I'm driving down this road, and the road begins to incline slightly. As I'm going up this long, drawn-out, slow incline, I notice the tall grass rustling on my passenger side, or right side of the road, and it's caught in my brights. I immediately get ready to brake because I'm thinking it's a deer about to jump out across the road, or maybe a skunk or something, and up stands this dark shape, hyena-looking animal that seemed to stand up on 2 legs. It was tall, taller than a man. It scared the crap out of me. It all happened so fast within just a few seconds, but I got a look at it. It reflected a dark crimson kind of eye shine, because my brights hit its eyes. It stood up out of the tall grass, facing my direction. I don't know if it looked directly at my vehicle, but I saw its face. It was very twisted and hyena looking. I wish I could describe it better for you, but I can't. It gave off a really bad vibe that I felt the second I saw it, and it lingered. It was this horrible feeling I felt in the pit of my stomach that just screamed I shouldn't have seen what I did. When I first saw the grass rustling, I had let my foot off the gas, but not pressing the brake. As soon as I saw this, I had about 3 seconds of shock and, "What is that?" and then slammed the gas to go. The whole time, trying to rationalize what it is that I saw and what it could have been. Even though I got to see it from the front, I couldn't see any specific details like what its arms or hands looked like because they were down on its side, but it resembled a very hairy person with an ugly hyena-looking head and face. That's what I made out from the few seconds of my brights hitting it through the grass. And then, that evil feeling. Gosh, it's hard for me to type this out without getting chills just thinking about it. I have never just felt that overwhelming sense of evil before. Once you feel it, if you ever have felt it, you'll know. It's uncomfortable. The spot I usually stop to turn around at, I sat there for a minute and hesitated on what to do because I had to turn around to go back home. The exact same road. I didn't want to cross that spot again and see that thing. After sitting there for maybe 5 minutes, debating with myself, I talked myself into doing it. I was very nervous the entire drive back home, even though it's only a 10-minute drive back. As I drove back through that spot, I didn't see the animal again. I even looked in the same spot I saw it before. It was gone. The feeling too was gone, and it didn't seem to be anywhere around that I could visibly see. Anybody out there who's listening will understand where I'm coming from if they've ever had a sighting that's truly frightened them as this did to me. Whether it be something that doesn't exist or a true animal, fear is fear. There's just something far more to this than seeing something that I didn't know what it was. It invoked this awful feeling of fear and dread. I've never had that happen before. I don't think it was a natural animal either. Nothing besides bear will stand up on their hind legs like this did, and it was skinny looking. The face is what still haunts me when I rethink about this encounter. I don't want to dwell on this too much, but thought if I told you about my sighting with whatever this animal is, I could possibly get some answers. What did I see that night? Years ago, I was working as a chemicals operator at a company near the airport here around Huntsville, Alabama. I was scheduled to work a third shift, and I had extra time on my hands before going into work that night. So just before dusk, I went down to a swamp I knew had some good bass and bluegills to try out some new fishing lures I had just bought. Now, mind you, this is in the afternoon hours, and some people were still driving up and down this road, getting home from work, so traffic was pretty frequent. As I stood along the edge of the road in the swamp, casting my lure out, I hear a very large tree snap and crash in the backside of the swamp. I've never heard a tree fall in the woods naturally before, other than someone with a chainsaw cutting it. Then, 2 minutes later, another tree snapped and crashed close to the same area. Totally not a coincidence, so I'm no longer fishing at this point. Instead, I started walking down the edge of the swamp on the road to get a better look into the woods. I couldn't see anything moving or standing, at least as far as I could see anyway. Since the sun was going down behind the swamp, it was very dark in those woods. I started to hear something running towards me. I wasn't scared because I could tell it had to be small, running my way. Then, out of the thicket of the woods, came a red fox, running straight at me, and passed by me by about 2 feet, crossing the road, not even looking for cars or anything. It was completely scared out of its mind, like something was hunting it. I turned back towards the swamp that this fox had ran from, and I could smell it. The smell of a wet, dead goat that had been rotting in the hot summer sun for about a week. It was god-awful too. I got that eerie feeling that I should leave, so that's exactly what I did. To this day, I've never gone into those woods to investigate what made me feel that way. I know that foxes don't normally run toward people, but that fox was scared of something in those woods, and it didn't give a damn about me or heavy traffic. No, I didn't see a Bigfoot or a Dogman, but then again, I have never seen a Black Panther either, and I know they are real. 2 trees falling, fox running by my legs, that horrible smell and that eerie feeling. Too much to be a coincidence for me. I took my cousins out for a night stroll out this last month. Some backstory. Usually every May, a lot of my family will go out to my wife's cousin's house, which has tons and tons of woods surrounding it. It's very peaceful. Every May, a lot of us cousins will go, see each other, and have tons of food and hang out for a few days at a time. Think like a big Christmas get-together, but instead it's in May. This time, we decided at night to do some night hiking around these parts, to explore and to see what we could see. My wife's cousin has great sets of high-powered flashlights. They're the rather expensive kind, but they work great. They have multiples of them, so I decided to take a few of the little ones out with me. So it was me and my 3 little ones, aged 8 to 13. So maybe not little ones, but they're still just kids. The entire time we're walking around, we aren't seeing a whole lot of anything. Mainly just deer from time to time, and that's about it. They were terrified that a cougar was going to get us, because cougars are nocturnal hunters. But I kept them calm, letting them know that we were making too much noise to draw in a cougar and would scare it away. That's when they decided it would be the best idea to travel into even thicker woods, where the underfooting wasn't as safe due to unseen rocks and brush. At the time, I wasn't aware of that, so I said of course. Being in the moment and not wanting to disappoint them. I feel like bravery got the best of all of us as we traveled into the thicker and thicker, dense parts of the forest. It was quiet, but I had noticed that there had been no crickets out at all this night. Having really nice flashlights, we were pursuing to push as far as we could. The part of the forest that we were descending down was a hill that eventually drops off to a steep canyon, which drops off again into a small river that flows around the area. During the daytime, the scenery and the sights are beauties in their own right, but during the night, it could be a death trap. As we're descending down to that point into the thickness of the forest, we hear branches breaking and the sounds of something big moving around just a little past us in the trees and brush. The time of year was not in our favor. Being springtime, everything has grown back, full and lush. You don't have a ton of visibility because of that. The kids and I halted, listening quietly. That's when the 13-year-old started panicking, thinking it was a mountain lion, but I kept trying to signal to him to be quiet and to listen. That's whenever it was stopped making noise. We stood there for a minute, thinking that whatever this supposed mountain lion was doing, that maybe it heard us and walked away. We didn't hear anything though, and had it left the area, we would have heard it trot off into the night. It was just quiet. I kept signaling to the others to slowly start to back away in case it was, and that's when we heard whatever it was start coming towards us in the trees. It sounded so much bigger than any mountain lion because each step it took was a heavy thud. That's when I started to grab the kids and swiftly retreat back up the hill we were coming down. We were all trying not to scream. It was an incredibly scary situation to be in, and I think even the more experienced and tough men of the mountain would have been terrified. I turned around to hopefully, or not hopefully, catch some sort of glimpse of whatever was moving in our direction towards us, and I see this big yellow glowing eyes higher up than I am. That's when I lost it, and just bolted it with the kids out of there. When I saw those eyes, that was enough for me. I never shined my light at them. They were just glowing up there in the trees. Luckily, the kids never saw it because they were busy running up the hill, thinking it was some big mountain lion. I know for a fact that it was for sure not a mountain lion. It was big, tall, and sounded like the weight of a great weight. Why it started aggressively approaching us, I have yet to know. I don't think it bothered to chase us up the hill or anything. When we got out of that thicker part of the forest and the land had flattened out, there was nothing behind us and no signs of anything following behind us. I didn't care. I just got us all back to the house, and that was that. They were freaked out, telling their parents that we went out there and almost got eaten by a huge mountain lion. I played along and agreed, but I know it wasn't a mountain lion. It's probably for the best the kids never know it was either. I will never tell them that and risk scarring them for life, especially about those eyes. It was a scary experience, and it's kept me out of that area at night.